Well, people in some communities have returned home after being evacuated due to wildfires. As we heard from Snow Lake Mayor Ron Scott, what they return to may shock them.
And, they'll see a lot of changes around town that when they come back. And I just want to commend our people for coming together and putting such an effort into getting this community really back into the kind of shape that we can, handle whatever nature throws at us.
Some people have had a chance to return home and survey the damage. We're inviting you, if you were forced from your homes, to share your story. What did you come home to? Or maybe you're someone who has been affected in previous years by wildfire, other natural disasters. What did you find? How did you rebuild? Join the conversation. Share your stories and comments. Maybe you have a question. 204-780-0893. 204-780-0893. Or text us at 204-588-7355. 204-588-7355. My next guest today knows what people returning home following an emergency evacuation are dealing with and what might be next for them. Glenn McGillivray is the managing director for the Institute of Catastrophic Loss Reduction, a research institute funded by the insurance industry working to make Canadians safer against severe weather. Good afternoon, Glenn. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So as we've heard, and we know, some people in northern Manitoba who were evacuated weeks ago due to the wildfires are now allowed to return home. They've probably already returned home, and they're surveying what has happened to them since they left. Give us a sense of what will people be arriving home to possibly find when they get there.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It changes from place to place, even from block to block in communities. Some people are dealing with total losses, unfortunately. Other people might have minor damage to their homes, like melted siding and things of that nature. In other cases, the home looks fine. There might be some smoke damage inside or nothing at all. And then on top of that, though, you have the environment around the community. A lot of people get shocked to see the damage to forested areas done by the fire. It's a real mixed bag, and I think people are going to be facing a whole range of these types of issues.
Glenn, no one can ever imagine, having to be away from home for weeks, coming back, and then taking a look at what's happened to their home, to their community. Where does one even start to unpack or think about once they get home?
Yeah, I can't even imagine myself what these people are going through, and my heart goes out to them, that's for sure. These events cause great stress, and there's been a lot of research about, the societal impact of these types of things and the family impacts on these types of things. One of the places to start is with your insurance company if you do have damage and you are in fact insured. We're finding these days that some people don't have insurance. But if you do have insurance and you do have some damage, even if it's smoke damage, it's a good place to start. There might be some community groups, some neighborhood groups that can help out as well. It really depends on what you're facing in your community. And I think, one of the tough things to wrap your mind around is that while your home might be fine, the infrastructure in your community may not be fine. You may not have electricity or running water or something like that. You may not even be allowed to move back in for a while until these things are all settled.
We're speaking with Glenn McGillivray, Managing Director for the Institute of Catastrophic Loss Reduction. We want to hear your story. If you're someone who's recently returned home after being evacuated due to the wildfires, we'd like to hear from you, hear your story. Maybe you have a question for Glenn. 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893, or text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. With your background knowledge in insurance there, Glenn, what will be covered for people if their homes are covered, by insurance when it comes to wildfires?
Yeah. So the good news, if you do have homeowners insurance or business insurance, wildfire damage is covered right across the board. There are no exceptions to that. That includes smoke damage as well. So if the home is structurally fine, your belongings are okay, but there's smoke damage, your insurance company will help remediate that damage and get you going again. So that's the good news.
What kind of coverage is there? Is there like different tiers of coverage when it comes to protecting? Because, I mean, we've heard about so many extreme weather events in our country, especially recently. I mean, what kind of coverage can people get? Is there like different levels or different packages here for people?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, when you speak to your broker, you can talk about having the Cadillac coverage. We still use that term, I think, these days, or you can have really basic coverage. Some of the differences are, some insurance policies, like a good quality policy, will replace your structure and belongings. Others will cap off at a certain amount, and so you really have to be careful that if you buy homeowners insurance, that you buy one that will replace all your belongings in the structure without question. That's an important thing. Another consideration of things like fences and outbuildings and things other than just the home itself. Some really basic policies may not cover outbuildings and things of that nature, whereas kind of a deluxe policy would cover those things as well. It all depends on what you've purchased, and people should speak to their insurance provider, whether it's a broker or an agent or the company itself.
It is 12:42 here, and we're speaking with Glenn McGillivray, Managing Director for the Institute of Catastrophic Loss Reduction. We'd like to hear from you. If you're someone who has returned home and evacuated because of the wildfires, we'd like to hear your story. Maybe you have a question for Glenn. Maybe you're someone who has actually faced this in the past. How did you rebuild your home? Give us a call, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893, or text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. Glenn, the work that you do focuses on climate resilient homes. Tell us a little bit more about the work that you do. What needs to be done to make homes, communities more resilient to these extreme weather events that we're witnessing?
Right. So when we talk about an individual home in harm's way, in the way of wildfire, we talk about flammability of that home. And there's kind of two parts to it. There's what we use to build that home, so the building materials, that's one thing. And the second part of it is everything else that's immediately around the home that could ignite and cause that home to go up in flames. And so on the first part, we know how to build a home that's more resilient to wildfire. So we're talking here about a Class A roof cover. So whether you choose an asphalt shingle or a metal roof or a stone roof or something like that, it should rate a Class A. And these are basically very, very easy to find, these types of products. The second thing we talk about is the siding. So it's on the side of the home. Anything but vinyl siding is a great choice. And so cement fiberboard or stucco or brick or stone. There are even some engineered wood products, believe it or not, that are okay. But anything is better than vinyl siding. Vinyl siding is just bad news when we're talking about wildfire risk. And then there's a whole host of other things that we can talk about, what you make your deck out of, whether it's wood, which we're not too fussy about. We like to see something that's not flammable. We would prefer a concrete or a stone patio over a wood deck any day. And there's a whole raft of other things as well. We do not build homes like this as per building code. So no building code in Canada requires you to build with wildfire in mind. And we'd really like to see that changed. We'd like to see a wildland urban interface building code here in Canada. If we can implement that, we'd be the first country in the world to do so. They do require it in California and other places, but no country has that requirement. And we'd really like to see that changed here in Canada as we see more and larger fire year after year.
Some people might wonder too, Glenn, these building materials, as you mentioned there are a number of things that people can do to make their homes more resilient to wildfire. But I mean, it sounds like it might be expensive to do that. Is there any type of coverage or program or something, if people have to rebuild their homes in order to protect them from extreme weather events, if they were to build with those materials?
Yeah. So first off, when you're building from scratch, when you're building brand new or unfortunately replacing a home that's been lost in a fire, the cost of these materials is considerably less, and they're much easier to install. We're not talking about anything out of the ordinary here. We're talking about, let's say, an asphalt shingle that rates a Class A, which most do anyway, and you don't have to put them on in any special way. They go on just like any other shingle. And the same with some siding. I mean, we already use some of these sidings very commonly here in Canada, but when you're putting these up in a brand new home, they're just as easy to do as anything else, and the price differences are anywhere from zero to just marginally higher. So it's not that much more expensive. It doesn't delay reconstruction, and we know this stuff works. It's really, really, really helpful.
We're speaking with Glenn McGillivray, Managing Director for the Institute of Catastrophic Loss Reduction. We're talking about if you've been evacuated from home, what did you come home to? Maybe you have a question here for Glenn. Maybe you're someone who has experienced this and had to rebuild your home. Give us a call, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. Or text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. And you don't have to share your name if you're texting us. You can ask your question or make your comment anonymously. Glenn, whose responsibility is it to make communities and homes more wildfire resilient? Is it the responsibility of the homeowner, or is it the responsibility of the municipality, or who would it fall to?
So whenever we talk about this sort of thing, whether it's wildfire or anything else, we talk about a whole of society approach. Everybody has a role to play. All levels of government, all three of them, private property owners, homeowners, insurance companies, other private industry, such as lending institutions and so on and so forth. Everybody has some role to play in community resilience, and we can't just load it off onto one person or one group.
You touched on there about some of the things that other countries are doing to protect themselves from wildfire. I know it's been a very early start to the season here. We've heard about wildfires in other parts of the world. Is Canada's situation here unique compared to other countries where they have battled wildfires in the past? And the example that you brought up was California. Is Canada in a category of its own?
Yes and no. If you kind of look at things at a really high level, you can argue that Canada and the United States and Australia and some other countries are kind of in the same boat. We're looking at the same kind of general overall issues: lots of fuel, changing climate, a warming climate, lots of assets in harm's way. When we talk about things at that very high level, a lot of us are in the same boat. If you want to get down to specifics, however, one of the issues we have in this country is we have a big country here. And if you want to argue that the way to protect communities is to go out and to manage the fuels out in the woods and in the forest, that's a pretty expensive proposition. And we're not even sure if it's realistic. If you look at a map and look at how much boreal forest covers Canada, it's staggering. It's close to 60% of our land mass. And the boreal is not just the only forest that burns. We have grasslands, and we have other forests as well. So just the sheer size of this country, there's something like 60,000 small communities in Canada that are at risk of wildfire sitting in the boreal forest. And again, that doesn't count all the other places that can burn in Canada. So it's a big, big challenge in Canada. And I like to argue that going out into the woods and thinning the forest of fuel is one thing, and I'm not so sure that's a realistic thing. We have to start also, though, at the structure level and make our structures more resilient to wildfire.
I'm curious to know, we've heard stories, Glenn, because we have had some folks that have returned to their communities here. Some homes are standing, some homes are not. Is there a reason behind that?
Yeah, it's really intriguing. And back after the Fort McMurray fire in 2016, I asked myself the same question. And we actually got a researcher in the Fort McMurray to do a forensic investigation. We looked at homes that were lost right next door to homes that were absolutely fine. We like that one-to-one comparison as close as possible to each other. And it's all about the embers. There is American research going back more than 20 years, Australian research going back more than 20 years, that indicates that homes and communities ignite not due to a wall of fire, but due to the embers that are blown far ahead of the fire front. Embers land on the community like it's like millions of lit cigarettes, really, and they ignite things. And A leads to B, which leads to the ignition of a home. And then once you get a few homes going, they lead to the ignition of other homes, and you get a chain reaction. So it's really intriguing where you get some homes that were lost really close to homes that were absolutely fine. And it's primarily because there's nothing about that home or around the home to make it flammable. So as bad as these ember storms get and these firestorms get, if there's nothing flammable around the home, you have a very good chance of that home surviving.
Glenn, finally, I want to ask you here, can we truly stop wildfires from reaching and threatening communities? Is there a way to do that? Just because of we've heard about big communities. I think of, Jasper, I think of Fort McMurray and what we're seeing this summer so far. Is there really a way to stop these wildfires from getting so close and into these communities?
I would argue not. I keep hearing, and I wish I had $1 for every time people say, "Oh, just cut a fire break between the community and the forest, you'll be okay." Those embers I just talked to you about can travel multiple kilometers up aloft in the air and land on communities. In the case of Fort McMurray, the fire started on the other side of the river, and the fire reached into town. The embers reached into town because it was so windy. Those embers blew into the community. In West Kelowna in 2023, we had embers go over Lake Okanagan by more than 2.5 kilometers and land into the community. In Canada and the United States, we tried to eradicate fire. We tried to remove it from the landscape for over 100 years to no avail. That's like saying, let's remove the wind or let's remove the rain. It's just not possible. And so this is another thing that reinforces the idea that that building structures that are less flammable is kind of the way to go. Wildfire is a structural flammability problem. It's not a flammable forest problem.
Glenn, I thank you so much for joining us today here on the show and your insight on this and being part of this really important conversation, especially what we're experiencing here in Manitoba right now. Thank you so much for joining me today here on the show, Glenn.
Thank you.
Glenn McGillivray is the managing director.